All right, and I'm now going to turn it over to Ken Belt. Ken, thank you so much for coming and sharing your knowledge and expertise with us tonight. I can't wait to learn from you.
So share screen?
You can share, you can start talking, you can share your screen, and everybody else is muted, and mute yourselves, and we'll do questions. You can do questions in the chat, and then we'll have time for questions as well after.
Topi's talking. She's hungry. That's my dog. Thank you for coming to see whatever there is to see here. I have a lot of interest in organic matter. I actually studied it in school, right? So it is a topic worthy of a dissertation, actually. And you'll see some of the data that I collected from the dissertation, but mostly these are going to all be concept pictures. I'm very much into using photography and figures to explain scientific principles. I just think it's more interesting when you do that. So let me get started. The title is Mind in the Gutter. I love that first part. The Urban Gutter Subsidy. Okay. How do I change the page? Oh, here we go. All right. So here's an outline for tonight. I'm going to just tell you about a little bit of stream ecology, and then you're going to meet the shredders. So hopefully that'll evoke some interest there. And then I'm going to show you a few slides that show how important organic matter is to stream ecosystems, and in particular the leaf breakdown process. And then we're going to talk about urban litter fall, which is, in this case, it's not the styrofoam cups in the stream, it's the leaves that actually fall into the stream, or in this case, that are washed into the stream from all the streets. And of course, that's a huge subsidy. Subsidy is an ecological term. It means that for a certain ecosystem, things coming in from the outside are subsidizing some of the needs in that ecosystem. So you all may have heard about the way that salmon get taken up by the bears, right? And even though the salmon came from the stream, their nutrients, when the bears take them up into the woods, actually feed the forest. So that's a subsidy. All kinds of other subsidies. Okay, just a little stream ecology. Streams have processes, and we also call those functions. So we have a saying in ecology, structure and function. Structure is kind of the bugs and the algae and all that. That's the kind of the basis for so much. But the processes are what happens. They're kind of like a process in a factory. The factory is there, that's the structure, and the processes change something from something else into something else. And they are crucial for the ecosystem to work, all right? So leaf litter breakdown and transport is one of the really important processes that happen in urban stream ecosystems. And I'll get to this later, but it's worth pointing it out right away. Leaves break down in gutters and streets, whereas in a natural system, they break down in the stream. That's a big difference, but even bigger difference is that there's so much litter fall. And I'll explain why a little later. So urban streams are very different for yet another reason. Okay, so I thought you might like to know Can you all see up here? Is there anything in the way?
Nothing's in the way for me. We can see the whole.
Okay, that's just my screen then, good. I thought you might like to know, how do you measure litter breakdown, leaf litter breakdown? So how fast it breaks down means a lot to the ecosystem for a whole lot of reasons. I'm not going to get into that, but it's a very important measurement. And basically you put leaves in bags, many, many, many bags. And then you retrieve them from time to time and see how much you lose. For example, here's this is my wife, actually. This is a string of bags with leaves in them. So I know how much they weigh. So here's a full bag, and later on in the process, this is what they started to look like. So the mass inside the bags disappears, and you put them out in the streams. It's really kind of a cool thing. It's a demonstration that you don't have to have a mass spectrometer to do stream ecology. So, and this is kind of what things look like when you open up those bags. There's a lot in there. There's actually a lot of bugs, right? So they've been living in that leaf pack. You start to notice some of the leaves are getting a slimy coating on them, and some of them are breaking down. Well, that's part of the leaf breakdown process. But basically, when you get the leaves into the lab, you got to wash them, count everything, weigh everything, and do that. I think I had 400 bags for the project I was working on. So it's just a lot of that. So this is the very little bit of data that I'm going to show you. And I don't want to go into the project itself, but it's interesting to me, and it kind of makes sense. So if you look at this part of the graph here, okay, this is the leaf bag mass. So as you would expect, the mass decreases through time. And that's what you measure. You get a number from that, and you can use that to compare almost anything you want. Different kinds of leaves, different streams, different this, that, and the other thing. The interesting thing about this graph is I did a forested stream and a suburban stream. So you can imagine what the suburban stream looks like when it rains, right? Kind of all hell breaks loose. And I was shocked that the rates were about the same in those two streams. So you've got a supernatural system and then an urban system until right here. And that's when they separated. Of course, this is the suburban stream and this is the forest stream. And I think what happened there, and this makes sense too, the flows, two things happen actually. This graph here is a hydrograph, so it shows flows through time. So there's a storm here and here and here and here. And in the urban stream, well, both streams actually, we got two really big storms near the end of near the last collection. So the bags were really emptied out by that point. But I think what happened is the microbes had processed the leaves to a certain point, because you feel that when you're processing your samples. The leaves start to get a little bit leathery and then they're easy to break, right? Means the microbes, fungi and bacteria and lots of other critters are actually breaking those leaves down. And I just think that we hit a sweet spot here where the two streams, one became very urban and the other one was kind of predicted because it was a forested stream, right? So it kind of depends on when the storms come, and then the urban stream kind of falls down on the job. So this kind of drop means leaf packs aren't going to be around very long. So in natural systems, at least in our zone, the leaves actually last all year, right? That's typical of stream ecology, and that's meant to be. That's what all the bugs and everything else have evolved to. And you can see where in the suburban stream, it doesn't happen, doesn't last very long. So any questions, or I guess we have to wait till the end?
We don't have to wait to the end. If people have questions, you can feel free to write them in the chat, and I can help moderate that with Ken.
Okay. So let me go to the next slide. So kind of a central concept in stream ecology, urban stream ecology, is called the urban stream syndrome, right? And I'm going to illustrate that with the next slide, but you can imagine a nice, I love this drawing. I think it's from my old textbook. You can see all these critters on the rock here, right? And in a healthy stream, that's actually what you do fine. Maybe not this concentrated, but that's kind of a natural condition. But so many other things are happening in an urban stream. That's why we call it the urban, the urban stream syndrome, because there's so many things that are affecting the stream. It's not just one, it's not just temperature. Things are kind of all coming in from all over the place. Just a few examples here is, you know, pollutant discharges, sewage or industrial discharges, storm drains with hellacious flows that come out. And then there's this system of pipes where the stormwater goes into the piping system. Some of these inlets, by the way, when you clean them out, they look like toxic waste dumps. And you can almost see that in this picture. This was in West Baltimore, where we had cleaned out one of these inlets here. And of course, awful things happen in streams with sewage for all kinds of reasons. All right, meet the shredders.
Ken, Robin wanted to see, and since you just talked about the chemical influences, she said that your graph was kind of counterintuitive because she thought the urban chemicals might cause the leaves to break down faster.
I haven't read much about that. I've read a lot of articles where some kind of pollutant interfered with the microbes and the bacteria and the insects, so the breakdown rate wasn't as fast. And that, you know, that what you just said may be true too, but I think what happens is those hellacious urban flows kind of overwhelm everything else. And, you know, these aren't bad streams. I mean, the one is a forested stream, so it's fine. The suburban stream was Gwynns Falls up in Owings Mills. So it's not exactly the kind of place where you don't have any sewage treatment plants and you don't have any serious dischargers or pollutant sources. It's mostly a problem with streets, gutters, rooftops. That wasn't the topic of my study here, but it is certainly one of those things you could study.
And two other things before you go on. There's Sophia was interested in different organisms found on different days.
I would have to go back into my dissertation and to answer that question. There were, of course, there were very different organisms in the forested stream versus the suburban stream. So that's just a fact of urban life, and that probably has as much to do with temperature and those chemicals in the gutters, because some are tolerant and some are not. And actually you use the ratio kind of tolerance versus non-tolerance as a way to classify streams, which will be the topic of later presentations, I hope. Does that help?
Yep. And then just a general question on stream ecology. Why is it an advantage if the leaf litter lasts longer?
They're important parts of the ecosystem. So they supply, it's a process. It goes all the way through, the leaves disappear, but in between, those leaves are being broken down, and that releases food downstream for all kinds of insects. And I'll talk a little more about this when we get to another slide. And it's basically a way of starting a food web and chain, for that matter, because things get washed downstream. So we'll get to the peanut butter and jelly slide eventually. So no one wants to eat a leaf, even insects. So think about that for a while. All right. So the urban stream syndrome is one of the reasons they're actually hard to study, because there are so many things going on at one time. It's hard to separate the pollutant from their effects, right? So here's a stonefly right here on the rock. They're always considered tolerant. When you find stoneflies in your sample, you're really happy, because it means the stream health is good. But stoneflies have this other thing going on with temperature. They're really sensitive to temperature. And if you've ever been in a summer thunderstorm, the temperature in an urban stream can just shoot way up and suddenly. And critters don't like that. They don't do well with that. So the syndrome is a big deal. It kind of throws the gauntlet down for researchers to figure out ways to study the parts, the individual stressors, they call them. It's not an easy thing to do. All right, meet the shredders. So, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but these are aquatic insects. And it turns out there are different kinds of functional feeding groups. Okay, like it makes sense that some of them are predators. You know, they go around eating other insects. Some of them are going to pierce maybe algae or vegetation to get the juices out of it, or maybe even other insects, I don't know. Some are scrapers. They're kind of interesting because they kind of mow the lawn, right? If you've ever seen a snail work on some algae on a fence, that's what's going on those rocks. So some of them have that kind of talent, I guess, that they can, there's a lot of algae growing on the rocks, and that's food to them. So that's why they call them scrapers. Some of them go around collecting whatever, right? And some of them are filtering collectors, like some of the caddisflies. Not sure you can see it, but I believe this is a, no, it's not. I don't know if I have a picture of that, but the caddisflies, hydrocychids, are always interesting to me because they actually spin these nets to catch that organic matter that's been broken down to tiny pieces. They catch that, and that's food for them. Today, though, we're interested in the shredders, A through C. So here's A, B, C. Okay, stoneflies are not only signs of clean water, but you like to see those in your leaf packs. They're pretty good shredders. They really help that process of breaking the leaf down. And this is a caddisfly, and that's the case there. And I can't see that well. Not sure what that is. So, So this is only some of these groups. This is the next page with those groups. this one's really interesting. That is a caddisfly, but he has built himself a house of little stones, right? So there's a hole here and there's a hole here, and you can just see his head poking out there. And when you see these on rocks, they just look like little rock pimples, right? But they're scraping that algae off the rocks. They just move that whole stone around so that A, they won't get washed away, and B, it protects them from predators. Okay, so organic matter itself, a little bit about that. I've mentioned a couple of times that there are pieces that go downstream to feed other organisms. There are all kinds of organic matter, right? There's actually dissolved organic matter. You can almost see it in the color here, right? Microbes really like that. It's like birthday cake to them, right? Gets things going. And then there is what they call CPOM. So that's coarse particulate organic matter. And you know, these are leaves that's what CPOM is, basically, and some other things too. I had collected samples, putting nets in streams to see what was flowing through during base flow. And I was kind of surprised that, you know, you think of litter fall as happening in the autumn, and it does. It really takes off then. But I got plenty of litter in the summer. That's why a lot of this here is green, right? So it's happening all the time, really. But this gets broken down into fine particulate organic matter. And of course, the way we get at that is we have to filter them. The particles are so small. This is a filter, and the brown on there are these fine particles. They are the ones that the hydrocychidae build those nets, and they get trapped. They flow downstream and they get trapped in the net, and the caddisfly eats them. Of course, sorry. Of course, there's litter, and then there's litter trash, right? These are nets that the city had at Gwynn's Run for a while anyway, and it just caught all kinds of stuff. A lot of this, though, is brown, and there are lots of leaves in there too. But the one I really like is the coarse woody debris. So these are the spots that most people would see in the stream and say, my God, that has to be cleaned up. These blockages of debris are one of the hot spots in streams, both in terms of habitat for critters to live, and especially the microbial communities. They trap fine sediments, right? So you actually like to see these in your stream, even though that we're taught to look at that and see a mess. When I see that, I think this is critter heaven, right? And there's a lot of good things going on here. A lot of nutrients are being taken up that flow in from upstream. This, not so much. So just to cover those again, I had to move something out of my way. I couldn't see the titles. So DOC, I mentioned, that's the liquid one, right? It's an important form of organic matter because it is food and energy for the microbes. And other critters eat the microbes, by the way. We'll get to that in a minute. That's where the peanut butter and jelly comes in. And the fine particulate matter is food for microbes and insects. And insects. And here's our coarse woody debris with all of these goodies that it does for streams. So it's kind of a progression. So the F-palm and the C-palm actually leach. Leaves can leach dissolved organic carbon or dissolved organic matter. You can call it that too. That's a big deal for the microbes once again. And it, you know, from the C-palm, it gets broken down into smaller pieces. And that's an important food for both microbes and invertebrates. So it kind of, it is a system. It kind of works together, and it works as a system from upstream to downstream too, which is kind of a neat thing. Just to illustrate, in this case, it's more a question of DOC, dissolved organic carbon. Why is that important? One of the most important stream processes we have, at least in terms of cleaning up pollution, is denitrification. That's that word right here. And basically what it means is that there are a bunch of microbes that get together and they change nitrogen that you find in the stream, like with nitrate, they change it to a gas and it just goes off up into the atmosphere, which is probably one of the only pollutant control processes that is finished. The atmosphere is full of nitrogen gas. 70% of our atmosphere is nitrogen gas. So we're changing the water pollutant into something that's just part of nature, right? That's a win-win. You don't get that very often. Even if you clean stuff, if you filter it, you have to do something with what's left behind eventually, right? Usually that is a process that involves a whole lot of things after you catch pollutants. But it's all about the microbes, right? And it's all about dissolved organic matter. I'm not gonna go into this, but it makes a big difference. As long as those microbes in the stream or wetland or wherever have A, lots of nitrogen to work on, but B, they have to have that carbon from the dissolved organic carbon that we were talking about before. Does that make sense? So, leaf breakdown. So, how, sorry, I can't. So how do you get from here, which is kind of a nice stream. This is a small stream in Oregon Ridge. You've got lots of stones here and you've got lots of organic matter, right? And how do you get from that to when these leaves are all broken down? And I love this picture because it's actually someone's artwork, but it kind of illustrates what happens to those leaves. When I used to process my samples in the lab, at some point, the leaves were only skeletons. So the microbes and the insects go at the spaces between the veins because the veins are just not very tasty. But you know, the way you do that, and this is a lot of people know about this from basic stream ecology, these are all shredders, right? And they get it from this to that, but it's teamwork, okay? Here's a leaf pack in the wild, right? And you gotta go from here to here. And there's the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? The peanut butter and jelly are biofilms, which is a big topic. That's gonna be in the blog next week too. So it's a combination of a lot of things, but mostly it's fungi and bacteria. And they really what breaks down the leaf, right? The insects come along and they want to eat them. So they kind of participate in the breakdown process that way, right? But it is both of them that are doing it. Although if you've got an urban stream, you don't need them as much because the leaves get pretty beat up in every storm. So biofilms are the peanut butter and jelly, right? So this is actually the biofilm in a stream on the surface and just below the surface. But the same thing happens in the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? They're all there, they're working as a system. It is actually an ecosystem within the stream ecosystem, which I think is a really cool thing. That it's almost like those Russian dolls that you open them up and there's another one inside and they get smaller and smaller and smaller. That's how I look at ecosystems, as stream ecosystems. Others too. The more you look, the more you find, and they're little systems that work with the larger system itself. Just a paper I came across recently. Biofilms have become such a big deal that they're also talking about, well, in this case, microbiomes in the rocks at the bottom of the stream. But now they're even talking about watershed biomes, because there's a microbiome on every plant surface, right? The leaves and probably the stems too. There's a microbiome around every swirl particle, right? And then you get to the stream and here's all the stream microbiomes, the ones in this picture. But it's now scientists are thinking about the whole watershed as being almost like a microbial skin. And I think that's the neatest concept. I love when things kind of come together and they work together as an ecosystem. That's going to be the subject of the blog coming up too. Okay. The big subsidy. So you can almost picture it that you've got all this impervious surface. You got a lot of leaves in the neighborhoods, and those leaves are going to fall, and they're going to be, even if they fall up here, when the wind blows, they tend to come down and drop into the gutter. And of course, the frequent storms will carry that directly into the stream, right? So I like to say that, you know, this is kind of its own kind of riparian zone. So riparian zones are, you know, what people like to see on the edge of streams because they do a lot for the stream. But to me, they also occur up here. And it's because a large part of it is because of the leaves. The leaves are so important to stream ecosystems. In this case, they're coming from upstream, almost anywhere in the urban area, and they make it to the stream quickly, right? So it sets up kind of a tension. You saw in the earlier slide with the breakdown graph that the urban stream just, you know, it just fell apart. The organic leaves just fell apart and they were taken downstream. So that keeps happening. You can imagine where there are a lot of leaves that leave the stream ecosystem. That's not so good for the critters in that. Well, it's not so good for the stream ecosystem itself, right? Here, on the other hand, you've got this, you know, normally the riparian areas would have the trees, right? But you've got trees here, here, and here, and they're getting in. So I have always wondered, the problem is the leaves don't last long in urban streams, but then again, there are more leaves in urban streams. And it's a big subsidy coming from outside the storm, outside the stream ecosystem itself. Huge, and we'll get to that in a bit too. And it gets to the point where, if you read about very small streams and intermittent streams and ephemeral streams, the gutters start to be very analogous to them. So really, to me, for the purpose of leaf loads, right, gutters are streams, right? You can almost feel it in this picture, right? All these leaves. Sometimes it drives people crazy because it clogs the inlets. This is a really good illustration of DOC, dissolved organic carbon, right? This color you see has leached out of freshly fallen leaves. So you can actually see DOC, right? Something to think about too, there's another kind of shredder here. Does anybody know what kind? It's called cars, trucks, bicycles. So they do a lot of the work already before the leaves even get into the stream. And they are part of the storm drain pipes too. So I opened up this manhole in Rocknell Heights, and lo and behold, despite the rapid flows coming off all the surfaces, there were leaves in this box, which is at the bottom of this hole, right? And it was like that in a number of different of these inlet boxes, right? And I can never resist showing this slide. Same thing happened here in West Baltimore, but it's almost like there's a whole lot more there than leaves, and it doesn't look good. Okay, so just to go back, this is how leaves find their way into a natural system, right? There's the riparian zone, the tree is right next to the stream, and the leaves fall into the stream. And I like to say, instead of that, this is what you have in urban environments. This is actually all the storm drains in Harris Creek in Canton, right? That green area is the Harris Creek watershed. So when you think about it, you can almost feel the streets and the gutters in this dense crisscross of storm drains, right? So there's an extensive stream system there, especially if there's stuff going on inside them, and they sometimes do act like real streams. There are certain processes that still happen. Of course, they're very handicapped, especially when you have no light. And there aren't many places for leaves to take refuge during the storm. So urban hydrology and ecology kind of get together, and they work very differently than natural streams. You might even say we've really messed up our streams. This subsidy actually, and this is just a little bit of modeling I did, they can actually, those leaves, there's so many of them, they can actually carry something like nitrogen or phosphorus. And of course, they don't stick with the leaves because the leaves leach, right? So the nitrogen and phosphorus can come out when a leaf gets wet and dry especially. So it's not only the nitrogen and phosphorus you have to worry about with fertilizers, say, or dog do, right? This graph kind of illustrates that. So if you look at this orange line, right? This is how much tree cover is in the watershed, right? And it's a made up watershed, right? But it's a lot like in Glendon, our site there. I made a bunch of assumptions. And of course, as the tree cover goes up, right, so does the leaf load, if you will, right? And the kicker about this graph is this side puts it in terms of a percentage of what we measured with the Baltimore Ecosystem Study of the nitrogen load in the stream. So all of these are in a range where it's so much more than what we measured, right? From 150% to 350%. That's an immense part of a nitrogen load that you're missing. And of course, it made sense that we missed it because we go once a week, every 2 weeks later, and we dip a bottle and take a sample. Well, there's not any leaves moving in the water at that point, right? Even this is especially true of the automatic samplers. You know, they have a tiny, tiny little hose, and the leaves are not going to make their way in there. Even the finer particles probably won't, right? So this is an example where, you know, leaves would do so much good up in the landscape, right? When I don't rake leaves, right? I always just mulch them. And for me, that's fertilizer, right? Nitrogen and phosphorus and some other things. But we let it loose because of the storm drain system, and it makes its way to some receiving water. Maybe the Baltimore Harbor, Chesapeake Bay, whatever you want. So this is just like the forestry folks had missing carbon in the forests. At one point, we, for a while, had missing nitrogen because what we measured didn't add up to what was logically there. So it's a good example, though, that you know, even without a lot of data, you can make some assumptions. And when the difference is this big, you should be able to get some money to look at that. Okay. All right. I have no idea what time it is, but we can start asking. Oh boy. Any questions?
If we can open it up to questions, feel free to unmute yourself. So I'll ask a question, Ken. When you were talking about the nitrogen and phosphorus loads there and the missing where it was coming from and the fact that it's being washed out through the leaves that are falling on the impervious surfaces in the urban areas, I mean, when they're talking about TMDLs and also regulation, you know, trying to meet the requirements from the Chesapeake Bay Agreement and things like that. A lot of times they point the finger for those things on agricultural areas and then say it's the farmer's fault and not happening kind of in the urban and suburban area. I don't know if you can speak to that in terms of the percentages or not.
I can't speak to the numbers, but it makes a lot of sense that, and you would have to go to their precise methodology, I think. You know, how do they develop those loads? I really doubt they get to this level of detail. I don't know if they try to factor it in, but that graph I showed you before would seem to say you should at least think about it, check it out. Urban streams, Sujay Kaushal has done a lot of research with urban streams and DOC. There's a lot of DOC in the streams. So, you know, I have to think that the vegetation and leaves in the watersheds has something to do that, since you've got a real shortcut from the gutter where the leaves fall to the stream. Also, that's actually, you know, Bill Selbig with USGS in Wisconsin has done a couple of nice papers saying that, yeah, This is actually a BMP.
Mm.
So they remove the leaves, and I'd have to check again, but I think they compost them, right? But they remove the leaves, and there's enough nitrogen and phosphorus in there that Wisconsin allows that to be counted as a BMP, a bed management practice. And that's about the easiest removal you're ever going to get, right?
True. I mean, it's right there for you. Anthony's asking, are they invertebrates in the basins of the storm drains breaking down the leaves before going into the streams?
You have to wait till the stream, because you're not going to get much in storm drains. Sometimes you may have a problem with sitting water, but I doubt you're going to find many interesting insects. A lot of mosquitoes, but they don't count as shredders. But yeah, that's the neat part of this process, that the cars seem to do so much of the breakdown that is normally done in streams. And, you know, that's before it even gets to the stream.
Ken, have you done is there a mass comparison of the watershed if it had just natural leaf load versus the urban leaf load?
I don't think so. I have seen very few papers that even look for that. And usually they're not on the basis of the whole watershed. Some people in Minnesota did some really neat work. If there was more time, I would have talked about them, but they can tell you what's coming off the house's roof and how much organic matter is there, and how much nitrogen and phosphorus. They're very high numbers. So, and what you have to do is just, if the houses are like the one that they looked at, just say, you know, there's so many of them in a watershed, and all, you know, and although you have to figure out where the drainage is, you know, some of us drain our gutter spouts to the lawn and it soaks in, right? But in a lot of places, that stuff still makes its way out into the street, and then to the storm drain, and then to the stream.
I have a question. It's not really a question, it's a concern of the folks that live in the Herring Run watershed, because we understand that the water filtration plant at Montebello is going to be dewatered, and then that excess water is going to be put into Montebello and then siphoned off into Tiffany Run, which leads into the Herring Run. And we are concerned about the what is in that water, and its an impact on the stream health.
Yeah,
Any thoughts about?
I'm familiar actually with Tiffany Run. I can remember being there when they used to, I guess, cut loose the wash water, and there'd be this big roar, and it was like a storm, right, in that little stream that puts into Herring Run near Harford Road. The key would be, what are they doing? How long? And what is there? I would think they know the concentrations of various chemicals and pollutants that are in that water. Did you know where it came from exactly? Is this just lake water from Montebello?
Well, the plant itself sits up above Lake Montebello, and they're going to dewater the plant, filtration plant, number one, is my understanding.
That doesn't sound good.
No, it doesn't. And then move that into Montebello, and because they're increasing the level of Montebello, they got to taper that off somehow, and they're going to take it into Tiffany Run. Now we have sewer stacks in the stream that erupt when we have a big storm event. So it just seems to me that this poor stream is in a no-win situation.
It's tough. It's tough.
It is tough.
At one time, a long time ago, I thought we found better bugs there than upstream. And we always
Is that right?
that water was cleaner than the stream water itself.
Well,
You
yeah.
don't know, but I know, all I can tell you is I used to work next to the Ashburton water plant. And I'll tell you, when they used to clean the settling tanks, the stench was incredible.
Right.
You think,
Yeah.
it's just water, but it's not. It has the algae in there and the microbes and all that. So I don't know. Gene knows all about it. He worked for the
Yeah.
city for 30 years. I don't know.
No, well, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to comment on that. It is something that we're trying to figure out how we can learn about that, and if we should be more concerned. That's all.
Yeah,
Thank you.
there should be a plant manager. Maybe he or she can help you.
Ken, Anthony wants to know, did you analyze that sludge that you pulled out of the storm drain?
Which slide? The one in the storm drain?
Yeah.
It was just awful. Yeah, that
You
was.
you didn't analyze it. You wanted to know if you analyzed it.
You could, but no, we did not. That was a project in the 1980s, actually. And that was about all other things. And, you can't really, it's a very expensive project. So you can't just run off and do whatever you want. You have to do what's in your plan, that sort of thing. But what I would want to do is actually take it and put it in little aquaria and then add insects to that and see what happens. Because in the end, you want to answer the question, does it kill stuff? And that's pretty easy to do in a lab.
Sounds like a good research project.
Yeah.
Janina is interested to know if there's ever too much nitrogen from the leaves that's going into the bay.
I would think so. I mean, it's an unknown quantity, though. Again, I don't know that they're actually taking this into account yet. But things between the science and management, things happen slowly. So almost every idea I see takes years and years and years to make it into the actual practice, right? Especially with BMPs and that kind of thing. So
Well,
maybe,
it seems that if Wisconsin is using it as a BMP, then there should have some good data on that.
yeah. That's why I love Bill Selbig's papers. I can say, hey, look at this. That's the problem, though. There is so much research. There are probably 1,000 times or 10,000 times more journals than when I started out. People don't have time to read those, or even the summaries. It's just it was hard work, and now it's totally impossible. So who knows? Somebody has to take that job up. I think Gene has something on his foot. Do you have a dog, Gene? No, whose foot is that?
That's Mandy's foot.
Andy.
We have I don't know if this is a question for Ken or not. Is there a trash boom on Gwynns Falls? Could you attempt a mass balance on the leaf litter?
Probably not. I don't know if I can find that slide. I thought it was here somewhere. Here. So this is in Gwynns Run, right? It's about 70, 80% impervious surfaces. These bags were like fishing nets. They were huge. And there was $1 million structure put in there to hang the bags from. And they kind of messed up a little bit. At first, they put bags all the way across the stream, and the storm ripped them all to shreds. And the same thing, worse is going to happen to the boom, because if you've ever seen a storm in the Gwynns Falls, the boom is not going to stop anything. I'd be surprised if it was still there. There's so much water that comes all at once, and with a stream that big, you have logs and all kinds of things with a fair amount of mass and momentum. So the answer is no, I don't think so. I was going to add some slides. What I have done in streams is I've sampled part of the stream. So I got these crates and I put mesh wire and coated the inside of the crate, and I would put those in the stream and just wait for stream water to go through it, and I could measure the leaf load that way. But during the storms, I would have had to do it from a bridge, and that's why I never got a chance to do it. It becomes infinitely more complicated.
All right. Do we have any other questions for Ken? Take advantage of this opportunity to pick his brain. All right.
Everybody's
Wonderful. Ken, you can, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. I look at everybody's here and they all look smarter than they did when they first logged on. So that's a good thing. And now you can take what you've learned and apply it and share it with others. And we do hope to see you at one of our upcoming programs. Remember, Thursday evenings of natural history. Next week is ferns. We have spider webs and zombie insects and migrations and bees and all kinds of fun stuff coming up. So please support the Natural History Society of Maryland and share what you learned here with others. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bronan. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Ken, you can stop sharing.
Okay.
Ken, you made me go look, and I found something that I haven't really looked at. This is from 1987. I dug it out, and it's a NABS t-shirt from one of their conferences. I'm trying to see what I'm doing here.
Yes.
This was the one that was in Maine back in 1987.
I like it. I used to enjoy going to those conferences. Actually, I put on a special session in one in 1917. So they're really a good organization.